This is a Nice Guys Patreon exclusive.
Welcome to another NHL team season preview video for the 2025-2026 season. 32 teams in 30 days rolls along. Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith, and Jarek Rubel. Well, with this trio on your screen right now, you got to know who we're talking about. Yeah, the Chicago Blackhawks for the 2025-2026 season. Last year, obviously, the rebuild continues. 61 points, only San Jose with less points in the Western Conference last year. But this year, there's thought that more competitive, a team that's going to be able to at least take some steps forward. And of course, when you look at the roster going into this year, what I love quite a bit is they got Ryan Donato re-signed, Donato's Pizza. Great season for the Chicago Blackhawks last year. A well-deserved contract extension with the team. He's back in the fold, which is great to see. Frank Nazar was re-upped long-term as well, and we certainly saw plenty of what he might be able to provide offensively for this team for a long time to come. So great to get those two players under contract if you're Kyle Davidson, the general manager of this Blackhawks team. When you look at the forward group up front, a lot of familiar faces as we had last year. Donato, Bedard, Andre Burakovsky now in the fold as well. Teuvo Teravainen, Frank Nazar, Tyler Bertuzzi, Nick Foligno, the Trooper, Jason Dickinson, Ilya Mikheyev, Landon Slaggert, Oliver Moore, Sam Lafferty. Once again, what's old is new again for the Chicago Blackhawks with Sam Lafferty back in the fold. Will we have Lucas Reichel pushing for a spot? He's certainly got potential. We'll have to see how that plays in training camp. Dominic Toninato as well, a depth forward on this group. And then the blue line, you can start to see the pieces start to form, and we're starting slowly but surely to see a core young blue line develop here for this Chicago team. We saw the other Anton Vlasic, Alex Vlasic, really start to mature and develop before our eyes last season. Clearly his best season in the NHL level. Wyatt Kaiser, they like Artem Levshunov quite a bit. Kevin Korchinski's got a real good shot to be, I think, a full-time entirety of the season blue liner for this team. They've still got, well, he's the old veteran now, Connor Murphy, on the blue line for this Blackhawks team. And, of course, a guy that is also getting a lot of praise that might be on this blue line, Sam Rinzel, here for the Chicago Blackhawks too. So keep an eye on that. Of course, they got the goalie that they anticipate will be their number one goaltender for a long time to come. I can't stress enough, and I'm sure Alex will point this out, how excited he was when Chicago acquired Spencer Knight last season at the trade deadline. And sure enough, he played not good, great for Chicago for the most part since they got him last year. Now, that's the great news in the goaltending department for Alex. The not so good is that Arvid Soderblom is also back for the Blackhawks. But nevertheless, I'll say this about Soderblom. We've been tough on him. I have Alex on the show, but he did have some great games at times last year, but there was such a level of variance in his play last season. The highs were real high, and there were some real rough, ugly lows as well for Arvid Soderblom. So be interesting to see how he goes. And then the man that's MIA, put out an APB. Where is he? He's lost. Laurent Brossoit, no one's even saying anything about him anymore, yet he is still on this roster. It's just a question of where the hell is he and where's he at as far as his recovery process. You're not hearing boo about it for a very long time. But Chicago, when you look at the division they're in, obviously, when you're talking about playing against the likes of, you got Dallas to deal with, Colorado to deal with, St. Louis, we think is going to just carry on that great finish to the season they had last year under Jim Montgomery. How much they improve is still up for debate. But in my mind, there's no question, there's reason to believe Chicago's going to be more competitive this year. And I think, I don't want to say pushing for a playoff spot just yet, but it's going to be one of those nights where it's not 2 points for free on the bingo card for some teams playing Chicago anymore. You're going to have to really play well and earn it to beat Chicago on a night-in, night-out basis. But you can tell this should be just a season where you continue to have the young guys develop, continue to build this cohesion with this core, and just look for players individually to improve. And if that collectively leads to team success, great. If it doesn't, and you have, another season out of the playoffs, just realize that it's the long-term vision that needs to be in mind right now for the Chicago Blackhawks. Alex, your thoughts on your team, the Chicago Blackhawks?
Yeah, it's always interesting heading into the new year. You want to see what the progression holds for the future, especially when you're talking about being in the midst of a rebuild. Last year was fine in my opinion. When you look at the long term goal of what this group is trying to do, what Kyle Davidson and Danny Wirtz and everybody up top trying to do with this organization is to move things along in the right way and be able to strike when the iron's hot. There's a lot of money still open. They pick up Shea Weber's dead contract to avoid the cap floor. They still have a ton of space, even holding that $7.8 million contract that expires at the end of this season. So, I know there's a lot of fans who want to, see the Hawks be competitive enough to make like I said, a wild card push or a playoff spot. That's not where they are right now. They're a year away from that. But like you said, building the core from the inside, letting these young guys start to take the room over. We saw a lot of Nick Foligno, in my opinion, looked like, basically the head coach in the second half of the season. Okay, he was more of a coach than Anders Sorensen, in my opinion. And to see, him kind of take that leadership role, being the older guy, that's what he was brought in for. But to also kind of give room to now where we're seeing Frank Nazar more so on the ice than off the ice, but, developing and building that culture. Letting, like I said, Alex Vlasic and Connor Bedard, those guys are starting to build their own culture. And that's the thing. If they can continue to progress forward and do those small things, then that's going to be a successful season for the Hawks. Yes, they should be able to win more games than last year. We should definitely see that strong effort that we saw in the second half at home. That needs to carry over into the beginning of the season because you got to start winning home games. If you're going to build and be back to the Showtime dynasty that we saw over a decade ago, the key was winning at home. And you had to deal with the Hawks at home in the madhouse back in the day, and you have to get that culture back. So that involves the fans, that involves everybody when you start talking about winning at home. But just finding their way around the league, and there's a lot of guys who've been cutting their teeth at the NHL level, not so much getting all that time in the AHL, but there's a lot of development going on in Rockford too. So I'm happy to see where the rebuild is going. But as far as the big club this season, with the additions they made, like I said, re-signing Ryan Donato, absolutely fantastic. He now finally has a base where he can say, hey, I'm going to be here for the next few years. Let me build upon my career. Let me build upon what I did so well last season and be a top six forward. The fact that you can slot him in any of the four lines, that's great for Blashill and company. Give them depth, give them balance. But I know he wants to be a top six forward, and we know he has the talent to be a top six forward. The old elephant hands moniker is pretty much gone with the way that he scored and the plays that he was able to make last year. And it's fantastic. And then to add a guy like Burakovsky, who was a teammate of Donato's in Seattle, I'm sure that probably helped a little bit as well. But having a guy who can, do the dirty work. He can give you some goals, but he can also, work hard. You have to have those hard-working guys in the corners and the boards. And I think Burakovsky is going to give that kind of edginess. The same thing we're trying to see from a Tyler Bertuzzi, who's somebody that I hope he can find his footing, too, in the lineup. They were trying to plug him in as a top guy on the top line, maybe be that bumper role for the Bedard. Didn't really work. And then they didn't really, I think, utilize him well in the power play situations. I thought he should have been net front presence in the power play. We didn't see that often. There were times where we saw Sorensen make those changes, but then he kind of backed off and went with a more conservative approach to the power play. That's the biggest thing with this group, is that they have to get the offense rolling. I know we talk about the blue liners, and yes, they're young blue liners. They're getting better. The goaltending is going to be fine. I trust in Spencer Knight. Arvid Soderblom, for as bad as he was the last couple of years, what he did last season, the leaps and bounds he's made, he looks like at least a formidable NHL backup. You don't want him playing more than 25 games in a season, but if he can give you some good effort in 25 games, okay, fine. And Laurent Brossoit, if he comes out of witness protection, so be it. But the offense is the biggest thing that I want to see improve with the Hawks this year. You have to start scoring consistent goals in the power play. You have to have games where, even if you're losing 6-4, but okay, give us 4 goals, give us 5 goals tonight. You can't be this team where you're wishy-washy on offense and defense. Something has to be solidified, and I think this team can get their offense going in the right direction more consistently than their defense this year.
What was surprising to me last year about Chicago, you hit the nail on the head. I didn't expect them to be a great defensive team last year. And sure enough, obviously, they were 7th from the bottom as far as goals allowed per game. But what I was a bit surprised by was that they were 7th from the bottom in goals scored per game. I did expect them to be better offensively than they were last season, but unfortunately that was not the case. They only averaged 2.73 goals per game. Only the Islanders, Bruins, Flames, Ducks, Predators, and Sharks had fewer goals per game last year than Chicago. So that was surprising, and that's probably what led to them being, certainly offensively worse than I expected them to be going into last season. Jarek, your thoughts here on Chicago?
All right, so I'm going to piggyback right off of what you guys were saying about the offense and how it needs to get going. I think there's a lot of upside to it because now Derek King is no longer part of this coaching staff. He was an assistant under Luke Richardson and Anders Sorensen after he took over as interim head coach for Jeremy Colleton. And the team just went dead in the water in terms of goal scoring when that dude was at the helm. And now he went off to Hershey in the AHL. He'll be with the Bears. I think that this team will take a lot of leaps and bounds in terms of the offensive production, at least in the forward group. But what worries me is the line mates around Nazar and Bedard in terms of defense. I think there's still going to be a lot of problems where these guys, they could put up points and, get, power play goals and all that. But I think, unfortunately, when you get to 5-on-5, playing with like Donato and Burakovsky, if you're Connor Bedard, isn't going to help your horrible plus minus. And not everybody loves plus minus, but I think it is very telling in terms of the good teams. It tells you who's going to suffocate you 5-on-5 and beat you 5-on-5 and not rely on special teams. Nazar, I love what they've done with Nazar. I think the extension, honestly, people think it was done too early. I think it was done at the right time because I think this is going to be a year where he could get to, 20, 25 or more goals and find a market eventually where they offer Frank Nazar's goal totals. I think he could get 20, and I think that would be worth a bet. But it's where the defense lies this year. I think the defense is honestly going to be one of the best cores in the NHL 3-4 years from now, because you look at who they got. You got Rinzel, who reminds me of a Victor Hedman, which might be a little bit egregious to say, but the way he skates and the way he puts the puck on net reminds me of Hedman a lot. Vlasic, Ian mentioned him, had one of his best seasons in his short career last year, very worthy of the extension he had. Del Mastro, I think he should make the team probably over Kevin Korchinski, though they might battle for it in camp depending on how Korch plays. Still got Connor Murphy on the back end. Love him, hate him, don't really matter. I mean, he's the longest tenured Hawk, the second longest tenured athlete in Chicago. Wyatt Kaiser's still there. And of course, the Artie Party, Artem Levshinov. So you got all these young guys forming a nice cohesive unit on the back end. And the key part with all of them, they're all big guys. And that's what it's going to take to win when you start progressing more in the NHL. You need those big defensemen. And as long as those guys could take a good step forward and make Spencer Knight's life a lot easier this season, it could be 75 points this year, and I'd be totally okay with that as a Hawks fan. You could, as long as you're playing somewhat meaningful games, getting closer and closer to the Olympic break, I think that'll be great. And then if, they can finish the season strong and be kind of where Anaheim was last year, I think that'd be a good step forward, because now with the decor, their decor is much kind of similar to what Anaheim's got. They got Lacombe, Minchikov, Zellweger, all these young guys. And with the right head coach, you get a good defensive unit out there, you're going to end up winning those 1-goal games a little more often. And you guys were talking about the teams in the Central Division. They played a lot of those teams in the Central real close last year, besides maybe the St. Louis's and Dallas's. Those games were a little more rough for them. But they were in there in those divisional games. And if you could just get that 1-goal swing to go your way in a 1-goal game, now that you have a better defensive core, not a retirement home back there, you don't have Mrazek and Soderblom playing all 82 games, and you have a true number one in Spencer Knight, those swing games are going to go your way sometimes. And that's going to build up on your point total a little more. And ultimately, just slowly improve this team. It's not going to be a playoff team. I mean, I think 80 points like the Ducks last year is probably a little too much. I think they're probably still in the low 70s in terms of their point total this year. But I think there's a lot of room to build on here with the Blackhawks. I think it's ultimately just finding another top winger to play with Bedard to eventually get them over the hump in terms of, that next step. I was saying trade for Pasternak for quite a bit of time. That obviously didn't happen, but I think with Boston being on their way down, there could be room there for them to start backpiling some prospects and some picks. And if Pasta doesn't want to stay there after a year or two, I think that'd be a perfect spot here in Chicago, as he played with right-handed centermen his whole time in Bergeron and Krejci. And, you have Bedard and Nazer here in Chicago. So I think that could be a nice fit. But with the roster they have now, I think it's just going to be trying to build on that offense, especially without Derek King there. I'm not in love with Jeff Blashill, that hiring, what he's eventually going to bring.
That's a great segue to my question I was going to ask, was that how do you both feel about the Jeff Blashill hire? Yeah, go ahead.
You want to go, Alex? You go first. Okay.
Yeah.
I was very wishy-washy on it. I think there were many other candidates out there that they could get. I was even a fan of bringing in Gerard Gallant, even though now he's off to China. I think he could have been a better head coach. I mean, Pete DeBoer became available. Maybe he's not the guy you want with a bunch of young players with kind of his asshole-ish ways and how he could be. We saw how his exits in Vegas and Dallas were incredibly similar, and he's never been anywhere more than 4 years. But Blashill, man, like with a young group in Detroit, even if Ken Holland left them with absolutely nothing to work with, that team became lifeless so quick after that last playoff push in 2015, or was it 16, one of those years? And then he went to Tampa, and what did they do in Tampa? They didn't even win a playoff series. Yeah, you were playing Florida 2 of those years, and Toronto finally gets over the hump, but I just don't think his philosophies are that great to get them to where they fully need to be, because I think a right coach could have made them a year ahead of schedule. But, Blashill, he has NHL experience. He worked with the U.S. developmental program, and KD loves to draft in the USHL. And, I mean, the Western Hockey League was a big part of where he looks too. But I think it's just kind of another placeholder, as much as I hate to say that. But I feel like when they're good, it's going to be somebody else.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I believe he is kind of the bridge gap, and you needed a bridge gap coach, because if you looked at all the other coaches who were available, a Gallant would be a great guy. Gallant would actually be great for the next hire. If things go well and in 2 years, then you move Blashill along and you get a Gallant, and he can make you that leap from first round playoff exit to team that could maybe compete for a conference title. That's when you get a guy like Gallant. Everybody else that was available really wasn't in the position to work in the parameters of where the Hawks are, except for Joe Quenneville, which we know they weren't going to bring him back. So it was Blashill. And I don't mind hiring him so much as if I had a real issue with them keeping Anders Sorensen around. Here's the third straight coach that's been fired that you kept as an assistant. Like, what are we doing here? Like, this stinks of the Hawks in the 90s, where we just kept recycling shit. Okay, to the point where we take numbers off of uniforms and put them back on other people when we started making trades. Like this is just problematic to me. If you're going to start something new, if you're going to have a fresh culture and a fresh build, then you have to have an entire staff that's new. I understand keeping Sorensen around because he's been with the organization.
It's clearly a Kyle Davidson thing, because this has been all under him.
Yeah. It is. But
yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of interject real quick and say, you look at the comments from Teuvo Teravainen near the halfway point of last year. He was mentally checked out. Yeah, he picked up his point production later in March and April, but he was out. Jones made those comments that inevitably got him traded, saying it's the same exact team that he joined back in 21-22. There's been no growth in terms of the locker room or the management that has made everything form into one is what you want it to be.
Yeah. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. When you're keeping the same head coach in the room and then you demote him as an assistant, like, how are those conversations even going amongst the coaching staffs?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, how pissed off would Derek King be, if Sorensen was making a certain move where he'd be like, well, I wouldn't have done that. You know what I'm saying? What's going to happen when Blashill makes a move and Sorensen's not happy with it? I wouldn't have done that. You know what I'm saying? You got to have full-on cohesiveness with your coaching staff, just like you do your locker room with the players involved. And I just don't think that's really setting a great tone, doing that all these years with these core young players. And you don't need to coddle them. Perfect example is when they hired Quenneville and they fired Dennis Savard. Everybody remembers the clip of Patrick Kane in his locker just bawling his eyes out, because Savard was such a mentor to him, and they both had similar styles, and he let him, express himself offensively, and now he knew that was going to change, okay? And that change was certainly much needed, okay, 3 banners later. So maybe these guys don't need to be coddled by the old coach. Maybe they need a new voice and a whole fresh set of new voices. I love the fact that Michael Pekka is joining this group. I think that's going to only help with the defense. He seems to be one of those guys like a Paul Coffey where his defensive prowess on the ice is translating to his defensive coaching.
And their face-off
off
win
the ice.
percentage needs big-time improvement, and he will
And he
help
was
that.
one of the best. He was one of the best at that too. So to help, if we're going to keep Connor Bedard as a center, which I still think is a bad idea personally, but if we're going to do that, then have a guy like Michael Pekka working with. They had Yannick Perreault, who was apparently the face-off wizard of all face-off wizards, working the coaching staff. He couldn't really get it done. So maybe Pekka can help out as well.
And with the whole Connor Bedard thing, it might not be the worst thing in the world if he kind of has a similar season to what he did last year, because his ELC expires at the end of this year. And I don't necessarily think he'll get like a Jack Hughes $8 million deal, but like, say that does become something that's on the table. He resigns here for 4 to 5 more years, then he could become an RFA or whatever. That deal is going to be awesome with the Nazar contract, the Vlasic extension, Weber's contract coming off the books. Then you're going to have probably still another 18 million, maybe less if they'll probably re-sign Knight too. But you could go out there and get that top end winger, or maybe centerman if you want to move Bedard to wing, to play on that line with him. And then all of a sudden that $8 million contract on Bedard, when he starts putting up 100 points per season with a superstar on his line, is going to look incredible. And with the defensive core they have, it's only going to help a playoff window. Sure, it's not this season preview, but looking ahead to the future, Bedard, quote unquote, underperforming, even if it's around 70 points, I don't think is hurtful to this organization in the long run.
No, not at all. And if you can get 70 points with the guys that you had offensively last year, just imagine what he can do with an improving core of younger players and then a top line veteran center or winger alongside him.
Right. But like Ian said, the faceoffs are huge, because that in the two-way game, like let's see, I wrote it down here. Bedard had 67 points last year, but was a minus 36. Regardless what you think of plus minus, think about how many goals against he was on the ice for.
Okay, but here's the thing, too. When you're talking about a top-line guy who's going to be playing on pretty much every shift except a penalty kill, his plus-minus isn't going to be – it's not like he's going to be a plus 20. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want him to basically be out. It was funny because when you were saying that, I was looking back at Sir Patrick Kane's numbers when he was a Hawk.
Okay.
Highest plus-minus was 16 in 09-10. His lowest in 17-18 was minus 20. So...
Okay. So he probably wasn't even, he was probably about even when he had the MVP season. Yeah.
And I would say from a two-way perspective, you can compare Kane to Bedard. Okay, Kane's not going to give you a whole lot defensively. Bedard's not going to give you a whole lot defensively. You don't want Bedard dropping down blocking shots. So, you know what I'm saying? So I would take some of those numbers with a grain of salt. He's going to be on the ice a lot. He's going to be on the ice when goals are scored against the Hawks. That's just going to happen.
And I guess the way to put it's probably more board battles, because he was getting beat on the board battles compared to, Kane, who's a wizard down and tight and everything. So,
and that's what he's got to work on. Like, obviously he's not going to fill out any frame, right? Like he is his size. So he has to work on his quickness to get out of the way and not get hit. And that's something that he'll have to work on moving forward. Yeah.
100%.
Of course, Connor Bedard eligible for an extension now, but no further updates and news on that front as of right now. So interesting to see how that plays out.
But the biggest thing is the amount of money we were able to re-sign Frank Nazar for clears room, like you said, you can maybe get Knight and Bedard extended this year, still have money on the table to sign something big next year. It's fantastic. What Kyle Davis is doing, I applaud it. So far, so good.
No doubt. Chicago's not going to be a team that's going to be featured prominently in any preseason bets for me. I can tell you that right now, just as far as I'm pretty neutral on them as far as point total is concerned. I do want to mention a couple nuggets, obviously, about the draft, because Chicago's worth mentioning because they had not one, not two, but 3 first-round draft picks this year in the 2025 NHL draft. Used them on Anton Frondell, the center from Sweden, with the 3rd overall pick. Václav Nestrasil. He's actually the younger brother of Andre Nestrasil, who played in the Detroit Red Wings a long time ago in the NHL. They picked him with the 25th pick out of the Czechia. And then, of course, Mason West, a Minnesota kid, with the 29th pick in that first round. So 3 first-round picks. And, again, you love to see that for a team that's obviously stockpiling young talent prospects and trying to build this organization the right way. So for 3 first-round picks for Chicago was certainly, even in a draft that was one of the lighter, weaker drafts we've seen, still to have 3 first-round picks, that's definitely not a negative.
and to be in a position too where these three kids don't have to come play right away. I mean, Mason West is trying to debate whether he wants to play hockey or football, and he's getting offers to play D1 football as well. So, and Brondell,
know about the draft, the late first round picks, they don't even know if they want to play hockey. Yeah,
right. He might be a quarterback in a couple of years. So that's a good thing though. Because I'm sure every Hawks fan that was watching the draft probably going, all right, let's get somebody who we can plug in right now. No, you don't need to plug in any more young guys. The young guys that you drafted the last several years are on their way. Like I said, if they aren't already with the big club now, they're in Rockford and will soon be there. And then you're creating space for top line guys that you can get from somewhere else. So I love the process that they're doing right now. You're restocking the cupboard while still rebuilding and getting things ready for a run in the next couple of years here at the NHL level.
Right. And if you look at daily faceoff, there's 8 guys on that line chart that are high-end Kyle Davidson picks that are probably going to make the team at opening night this year. I mean, that's a good chunk of your roster starting to blossom into an NHL talent and get that experience. So it's a process. I mean, Anaheim's had these young stars for a while now, and now I think's finally that time, 5-6 years later, since some of them started cracking the league, that they're actually going to contend for a wild card or maybe third in the Pacific.
Was there ever an opening night roster that had more than 5 draft picks from Stanley Bowman?
No,
I don't think so.
No.
Reichel and Kaiser are the only ones left, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I don't know. I think Reichel's days might be numbered.
Yeah,
honestly.
You mentioned him earlier. He could kick.
I don't know why he's still around, to be honest.
Right?
Not sure why he couldn't make a deal in the summer. Yeah.
I don't blame you or any Blackhawks fans for feeling that way. And just on our way out, before we wrap it up, I will say there is one thing I'm kind of intrigued by. And like I say, I expect him to win this trophy. No, but 150 to 1. Just a couple bucks, Spencer Knight Vezina. Okay, I don't mind it. 150 to 1. Like I said, the price is sprinkle on that. I do expect him to have a pretty good year here for the Chicago Blackhawks this season. Great stuff. This has been your Chicago Blackhawks team season preview. We thank Jarek Rubel for joining us here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Or Alex B. Smith and Jarek Rubel. I'm Ian Cameron. This has been your Chicago Blackhawks season preview for the 2025-2026 season.